Hello everyone, welcome to TGIF, another Friday, another episode. So, in the world of LLMs, today pretty much every organization is building applications which serve their businesses. And each of these applications actually end up conversing with large language models, small language models, and a plethora of them behind the scenes. So, when you look at building application architectures, what are the different emerging patterns that we have, and how do we come out with some solid enterprise grade application architectures? So, that's the key topic for today. I'm joined by Satish Kamalchand Dacha, who is actually a global black belt expert within Microsoft. He consults customers on building enterprise grade architectures around large language models. Join us for a short conversation today on TGIF. So, welcome Satish, welcome to TGIF.
Hello, Divya. Thank you so much for having me here. It's great to be part of an episode of TGIF. And I'm very excited to talk about how API Gateway can help in building an enterprise grade generative AI applications.
Sure. So, can you tell us, what is this API gateway all about?
Sure, Divya. So, API Gateway in its own is a technology that has been around for close to a decade now. Now, in the context of generative AI, what we are really looking at is bringing in capabilities around security, around monitoring, around rate limiting and throttling, around load balancing across multiple OpenAI backends, etc., in this API gateway layer. Now, because all these requirements are kind of cross-cutting, they span across all the different use cases that we have with generative AI, it probably makes more sense to offload these in a common gateway. And that's where API gateway comes in. And that's where over the last year, the concept of AI gateway, which is kind of an implementing AI use cases in API gateway, gained prominence and gained a lot of popularity and acceptance among a lot of large enterprises.
Fantastic. I think, yeah, that kind of gives a perspective. So, what are the primary features of a Gen AI gateway, if I were to call it, right? And how are those features actually put to use?
Absolutely. That's a great question, right? So when we talk about primary capabilities to look for in a Gen AI gateway, that has to be around, any. So when we build, for example, an application that is going to leverage generative AI technology underneath, uh, it has to begin with, for example, rate limiting or throttling, right? So in the world of generative AI, token is the currency, right? Now, if I have multiple use cases of generative AI in my organization, I really do not want a noisy neighbor problem or a scenario where one application takes all my bandwidth or capacity that's available. So the ability to throttle and limit the number of tokens on a per application basis is one use case. The second one is because generative AI, there's so much demand around generative AI, and there are two models to consume generative AI models within Azure, a pay-as-you-go model and a PTU, provision throughput unit model. What organizations do is they end up creating multiple instances of OpenAI in Azure. Now, because they create these multiple instances, there is always this need to load balance the incoming requests across these different instances. This load balancing is not your simple round robin or weighted load balancing. There could be other considerations, right? So can I set priorities? If I have a dedicated unit or a provision throughput unit, can I exhaust that capacity first and only send spillover requests to my pay-as-you-go instance? And then if one of my OpenAI instance starts erroring out, can I apply circuit breaker pattern and stop sending requests? This is the second one. So essentially, around load balancing and circuit breaking. The third scenario is I am a large enterprise. I have invested in OpenAI and I have multiple use cases. Now I want to measure token consumption on a per app basis so that I'm able to apply some sort of chargeback, right? So the
Sure.
ability to emit token consumption metric and track it, that could be a third use case which an AI gateway is able to perform.
Yep. So, in a
And then,
nutshell, if I were to kind of summarize, right,
yeah,
throttling, rate limiting, security, policies, token apportioning across different entities, I think pretty much it is a horizontal construct that takes care of all of these other matrices that we would need for applications at one single point, right? I think that's where the
that's
gateway term kind of comes into picture. So, can we have some demos on this, Satish?
absolutely. I'll be glad to show that. Let me quickly bring up my Azure portal. This is Azure API management instance that I have. Now, in this API management instance, so I have multiple OpenAI instances that I have created and they are ready already. What I need to do first is I need to build a wrapper on top of my OpenAI APIs in my AI gateway or API gateway. So within Azure API management, you can natively and seamlessly import OpenAI services as APIs. So as you can see, I have the option of adding an API, a brand new API, and then I see the Azure OpenAI service here. I can click on this and then choose one of my OpenAI instances, give it an appropriate name, and then import it, right? So let me just give this a name. So I'll just say Innovation Hub GenAI wrapper. And then I'm just going to click on next. Now, straight out of the box, I get the possibility of adding policies around managing token consumption. So this is our throttling use case, and then tracking token usage, right? So if I click on this, I get options to set token consumption on a per minute basis, on a per application basis. Now, there could be more than I have different. So if I want to throttle based on the IP address of the caller, or it could be based on the unique subscription ID of the application that the caller is using, right? So
Yeah.
I can set this policy here. Similarly, for tracking token usage, that was uh, around throttling. For tracking token usage, again, I can very easily connect this to Azure Monitor, App Insights, and then track the completion token and the request token and the total token consumption, right? And then I
Got it.
can add, filters. So if I want to track this token on a per application basis or per user basis, all that becomes possible. I have multiple dimensions based on which I can split and generate this metric, right?
Wonderful. I think this is so useful. I think it is out of the box available for
Yeah.
developers to kind of get started on this one.
Absolutely. Now, another very quick demo that I want to do about, and which is very critical, is this concept around load balancing and circuit breaking. So consider this. If I go back and showcase to you, I have multiple OpenAI instances myself, right? So I have three OpenAI instances, one in East US, one in Japan East, and one in Australia East. Now, I, as an organization, want to load balance my requests, generative AI requests, across these three instances. But while doing that, I want to apply some prioritization, right? So I want to send all the requests, for example, to Japan East. Now, once this has been exhausted, then I want to do round robin load balancing across these two, right? So I can actually achieve this by creating a backend pool. So a backend pool in an API management instance refers to a pool of OpenAI backends where I'm
Mhm.
able to apply load balancing logic. It could be weighted, it could be round robin, it could be prioritized. Not only that, I'm also able to apply circuit breaking patterns, right? So this entity here, for example, represents registration of a backend, right? So this is my East US OpenAI instance. What I've done here is I've given the endpoint, and then I have added a condition saying if I get a 429 response code from my OpenAI instance, which means that my OpenAI instance has kind of hit a limit in terms of tokens that it can process, then I'm kind of breaking the circuit, which essentially means that I'm going to stop sending requests to this particular endpoint for a period of 60 seconds. So this brings this powerful circuit breaking architectural pattern into your API gateway with a very simple configuration. Once I've done that, the final thing that I also wanted to talk about is in load balancing, I can then set priorities and weights. So my request will always be sent to my first priority backend. If this starts erroring out, only then it will be sent to priority two backends. And within that, I can have weightage to ensure whether it's a simple round robin or a weighted load balancing.
So, in a nutshell, when you want to build enterprise grade apps, you need to look at throttling, rate limiting, token apportioning, scaling, application of policies, so on and so forth, right? And GenAI Gateway is that one-stop solution to do an enterprise grade architecture around large language models. So, with that, signing off. Keep watching TGIF. Have a good Friday and stay safe.